Good. All right.
Yes.
So, first thing we're going to do is, so go ahead. You've been working and creating a sandbox course. So I'm going to go to one of my many sandbox courses that I have here. Okay. So first thing we're going to have you do is, once you get to your sandbox course, in the course navigation, you're going to go all the way down to the bottom. And I can't see everybody, so if you just came on the call, could you make sure you mute your mic, please? Thank you. All right, settings. So you're in your sandbox course, you're gonna go to settings, and you're gonna go about halfway down, and it's underneath the file storage and your large course. So it says grading scheme is where we're going. And unfortunately, didn't turn my presenter tool on here, so we'll do our best here. So you're going to check this enable course grading scheme. And you're going to want to go to view grading scheme right below. So once you click on this box, enable course grading scheme, you will now get a prompt or an extra. So you're going to click on this. Most of you are going to see a grading scheme that looks very traditional with an A plus, B plus, C, C minus. If you see that, you're going to want to go to select under scheme. Okay, you're going to see these options. So if you are a secondary teacher, 6 through 12, you are going to want to choose standards aligned grading scheme. If you're an elementary teacher, you're going to want to use the elementary grading scheme. Okay, so I'm just going to click on secondary because I have everything set up in my groups by secondary, and then you will see this grading scheme accordingly with our letters that we are used to seeing. So, okay. All right, so once you've done that, make sure you go all the way down to the bottom and you update course details so that saves. All right, so that's step number 1. Again, you're going to into the courses, and we are going to go over to this outcome over here. Okay, and so if you've not ever used Canvas before, you are going to probably not have anything here. And we're going to go to find. So when you are working in a sandbox course, you're only going to see the district standards that are in here. When you get into an actual course, when you see account standards, you should actually see your school appear here. This process is the same. So you're going to click DC Everest, and I just have a called training standards. So when you would click on, again, I'm going to go. Can I go back? Okay, so when I go to outcomes, I'm going to go to find. You're going to see account standards. The next thing you click, right now you'll all see the same thing I see, manual created and DC Everest. But when you get into your live courses, you should see your school here. When you click on your school, then there will be a list of all the courses or subject areas, departments that had, however it's been set up for each school. Okay, so I'm going to go to my training standards for now, which you, in your sandbox course, you can do this too. You can always delete them. And I'm going to go to, I'll just use the language arts to stay consistent. So once you get to a folder and then it breaks it down into each standard, you want to stop clicking. So I'm on language arts. I don't want to click each individual standard folder. Otherwise I have to do this multiple times. I want all of the standards for language arts. So when you're in elementary, how that is different. Right now we have to get the kindergarten standards in there, which is on our to-do list. So we'll get that done shortly. You have first and second grade. And then if you are doing all of these things in one course, then you can download this whole folder. If you are upper elementary and you've decided you're going to have a separate reading and writing course from math, science, and social studies, then you're going to want to do one more click here and then stop. Okay, so you'd have to do this 3 times to get just these standards into your ELA course. Or click here to get your math standards into your math course. Okay, I'll show that one more time for elementary. Okay, so you're going to go to outcomes. You're going to go to find. When you go to account standards, your school will show up here. And then for elementary, you will see already just these 2 groups in your folder. I'm going to go to 3rd grade. So say I'm creating my math course. I'm just going to click on the math, and then I'm going to stop clicking, and I'm going to go down to import. I'm going to hit OK. It says it's loading. So now you see I have all of these standards already in for use on my assignments, which we'll show you next. So I'm going to go ahead and upload one more here. I'm going to go back here. My screen is so big, I'm not used to having to scroll up and down, so you shouldn't have to do this. Okay, DC Everest, I'm going to, whoops, I don't want that. I want these. And I'm going to go down and import. Okay. All right. Is there anybody else, anyone who would like to see that process one more time? Assignments. So next thing we're going to show is talk about setting up assignment groups. So default is when you go into assignments, you're going to see groups that look like assignments, discussions. These are kind of the 5 generic default groups. What we are asking you to do, because we want to be able to report out information by standards, by those learning outcomes, is we are going to change the names so that we group everything by those standards. So for instance, if you are a math teacher, you might have numbers, equations, fractions, whatever your standards are. Elementary, you're going to want these big headers to follow your report card headers, what those might be. So in reading, you might have three buckets that you put all of your reading standards or content comes in. English might be comprehension, analysis, speaking and listening, whatever that might be. So you really have 2 choices. You can go ahead and just create new groups up here, hitting new group. So I'm just going to go ahead and hit standard. Sorry for the delay here. I'm just making mine very generic. And here's the other thing that we're asking you to do, and we'll talk to you about a little bit, is make just a 1 or a 2 to 3 letter abbreviation of that standard. Okay. So standard 1, I just created S1, and I'm doing mine very generically. So if you had analysis here, you might want to just in parentheses put A if you don't have another A standard group. Yeah, okay.
And then we have a great.
Okay. All right, so I'm going to go ahead. You can either create all new, or you can also go into these generic ones and you can edit those titles. So I'm just change special projects, maybe. Going faster than computer can go today, I guess. Whoops. Ahead of myself. All right, so we're just going to give you a couple minutes. All right, so the practice to learn. So at secondary, we were using success skills. So we are going to change that thought process to practice to learn. There will not be a separate practice to learn rubric that you will follow like we did for success skills. What we're asking you to do is actually put anything that you consider practice into that practice to learn folder. And I will demo that when we get to creating an assignment, what that would look like. So I'm going to give you about 5 minutes because I know the elementary for sure probably have not ever done this. So I'm going to give you some time to go ahead and set up these standard groups. So if you have more learning outcomes in a standard, don't put each learning outcome here like the I can statements, but put your big header. So if it's analysis and then you have 2 learning outcomes, like I can analyze a text and demonstrate writer voice or something like that. Sorry, English teachers, if I just murdered that. But you might have another outcome that might talk about I can analyze something else. So you would have 2 outcomes. You want to make sure these assignment groups are by your big bucket header, not by the learning outcomes. Okay. All right, so I'm going to stop talking. And I'm going to give you 5 minutes. So secondary, we're going to talk a little bit about the assignment group weighting. So if you go up to the very top of the page, next to plus assignment, you're going to click these 3 little dots and you're going to get a little drop down menu. And you're going to go to assignment group weights, the second choice. Again, to get to that, you're going to go to the top of your assignment page. You're going to go next to plus assignment to the 3 little dots, the kebab. And you're going to go down to assignment group weights. Weight. Okay? You're going to get this, and it's going to prompt you. Do you want to weight final grade based on these groups? So we want to say yes. All right. So as a PLC, and I think it was agreed by department chairs secondary the other day, is that not only by PLCs, but by department in your building, it should be uniform, that these standard groups look the same. I can't speak to how that looks individually, so please work through that with your department chair. So for instance, if I want standard 1, 2, and 3 to kind of be equal, I would divide that up. The practice to learn can count up to 20% of the grade, but no more. But again, it has to be consistent with PLC. Again, practice to learn really is a place exactly for that. It's a place where students are turning in practice work, where you're giving them feedback on it, maybe helping them review some things, could even turn it in a second time for practice, those kind of things, before we put in assessment or learning evidence up into these categories. All right, so I'm going to decide that I am going to my computer will. So I'm going to say I'm going to make this 30%. I'm going to make this 30%. I'm going to say it's only 20%, so I'm up to 80. So I'm going to use practice to learn 20. Just made it up. But you as a PLC group need to have this conversation so it is consistent, so that if 2 teachers are teaching English 9, that this weight, how kids are being graded between teachers is the same. Okay, and hit save. All right. Does anyone need to see that again? Again, I trying to keep the chat up here, but it keeps going away every time I go out on my screen. All right. Felicity, Tam, anybody else need to see that again? Yep. So, and again, elementary, you do not need to worry about this weighting. you're going to go off of your elementary report card standards. All right. So now we're going to go into creating an assignment. So from this page, you have a couple options. You can hit the plus assignment button way at the top, or if you know what standard you want to put it in, you can hit plus button right into the standard group. It does look different depending on which plus button. So I'm going to show you that. So if you hit plus assignment, again, I don't know, Tammy, Felicity, I might need to have to restart my computer here if this keeps going. When you hit the plus assignment at the top, you're actually going to get the full screen right away. You're going to get everything that you need to fill in right away. Okay. I'm going to go out of this. I'm going to cancel just so you see the difference. Those of you who have never done this before, if you hit the plus, I'm really thinking I'm going to have to restart my computer. If you hit the plus button in standard group, you're going to get a smaller screen. Maybe that looks like this. And you're going to want to go down and hit more options right away. Okay. And then you will get the same full screen. So just something to think about as you're thinking through how you're going to plan out. If you want to just get things on the calendar and kind of see what that looks like, you could go through each of those standard groups and just hit that plus button and put the assignments in there without actually developing the assignments. So that is a choice. And then it goes onto the calendar right away. All right. So here, when we click on assignment, that little 2 or 3 letter code that we made, we're going to start the assignment name with that. So I'm going to go S1 and then colon. I'm going to put first week review quiz or something like that. All right, so the standard group first, and then what the task was underneath that. Okay. Then here, again, just like you've been learning the last 2 days, here's your bridge content editor. Would encourage you to put something in here without leaving it blank, even if it's you just put in here what the learning is, or please see the Google Doc below to complete the assignment. Maybe you want to put in a video here in your assignment for them to watch first. And then in this external tool, as you learned about yesterday down here, is about putting a reflection in there. So I'm going to demo that right now. So I'm going to go ahead and put in a Google slide presentation up here. So if I hit my plugin button over here, I'm going to hit Google Drive. Maybe. I think I'm going to have to reboot.
This actually is one of our new integrations, Diane. Jason's been working on this, and so the other Google one might have been a better option. So it might not be your computer, it might just be the integration.
All right, sounds good. I didn't go far enough. If I can get out of here now. All right, I'll go back to the little plug. Thank you, Tammy, or Felicity, for pointing that out.
Yep. Yeah, it should be ready to rock and roll. We're just doing some finishing touches on that integration. So go to the Google Apps one instead.
Okay.
Summer is the time for everyone to update everything, right? Everything's a work in progress right now.
Everything's in beta mode, right? All right. You all want to be sitting here watching my screen do this. All right, so I won't demo that right now. If I can let me out of here. I don't know what's going on. All right, so I can put a Google slide here, I can put a video. I really wanted to show you that. And I might put at the very bottom here, I might put as please watch this Google slide. Can't spell it this morning. And complete the reflection paper below, or something like whatever you want to do there. All right, so points. All assignments are a maximum of 4 points. If you want to assess on 2 different learning outcomes, you would put 8 there. It's always in increments of 4 because that's how our grading scheme is set up. Okay. All right, so you notice here already under standard 1. That's where I want it to be. And in display grades, you really have 2 options here that we want you to use. So if this is a practice to learn thing and you just want to give them some feedback, you want to make sure that they did it and you gave them some feedback, you might want to just hit complete, incomplete, which would allow you to give a check mark for complete and an X for incomplete. Or you want it to display as a letter grade. We would really like, as a district, to be able to take out all the other options, but just not possible at this point. You notice this grading scheme shows up here. You do not need to do anything with that at each individual assignment because you already did it in the course level. Okay, so that's the advantage of doing it at the course level. All right, again, submission types, you went over that yesterday, I believe, or no? Did you go over assignment types? Yes?
Yep. Yep.
Okay. Okay. So this would be one, and again, if my computer's working, I would show you how to put an external tool in there again. But I'm just gonna say that it's gonna be online and I'm gonna do a text entry for this for right now. Okay, so again, you can allow multiple attempts if you just leave it. The default is unlimited, but if you want to say, you know what, I only want to give the student 2 attempts on this assignment, you can set that. I'll just leave it at that for now. Okay. So group assignments here, get my mouse. Group assignments, we would love to do some more PD on this because we think this collaborations and this group and how this works for being able to assign small group work to certain student groups. Very easy to set up, very easy to then assign them certain things. Just that we'll have to develop some tutorials or some additional PD on that. And then if this is something you do want some peer reviews, you want them to input on it, you can have that choice here too. Don't worry about the sync. This is right now, if you have just, it'll be generic here, but here would bring up your sections. So if you only wanted this to be assigned to a section, you could do that. Again, just can't emphasize the importance of making sure you put a due date on here. And even if you don't have this fully developed, go into that very small screen and put in the placeholder so that students know what's coming. Because their to-do list shows up a week in advance. So if you don't quite have time to develop it, but you want them to know that it's coming, make sure you put it on the calendar. All right. And then we are going to go ahead and hit save and publish. All right. So let's take a look at the chat here. So Ernie, your question is if you make a practice to learn assignment complete, correct. So complete, incomplete does not calculate anything towards the overall grade. So even if you have it weighted into the overall grade, if you hit complete, incomplete, it will not, excuse me, it will not calculate towards the overall grade. So it's when you do the complete, incomplete, even if you put 4 points here, it does not calculate anything because it's just a check mark. You did it or you didn't do it. Good question. Anyone else? Yolanda put in, she can't see group assignments or peer review. I'm wondering if that's because you don't have any students in your sandbox course, maybe? I thought that showed up as a default. I don't know if Tammy or Felicity has a thought on that. Okay.
I think it's because there's no students in the
Yeah.
course.
Yeah, that's what I think too. Yep. Okay. All right. So, yep.
And this is Lori. I have a question. When you were talking about the points being an increment of 4, 4, 8, that doesn't make sense. How would the computer know if I put in 8 that, you know, one of the standards is going to be writing and the other standard is going to be analysis of text? How will it know that it goes in both if I put 8 as the number of points as opposed to 4? I thought I had to enter it twice, 4 points into analysis of text and writing.
So if you have two different standards, you have to create two different groups if you to each of those standards. That hasn't changed. But like elementary, they have multiple learning outcomes underneath a standard. So for example, their math course, they have 5 learning outcomes. So they could, they would just, because they're using all of their outcomes, so they would just have math, or if they wanted to do individual groups for math, they could do that as well. But the advantage of just having a math outcomes as one bucket, then you can put multiple standards on the rubric, which we'll be showing here shortly. That's a good question. But yeah, that unfortunately, we were not able to change that by staying with this grouping like this, but it was kind of a collaborative decision to stay on this track with doing standards this way. Did that answer your question, Lori?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, all right. All right, so the next step is totally optional. We are not making anyone put a rubric on assignments. But again, we want to kind of show you the value of doing that. So I guess the question I would like is there anyone who would like to just have a few minutes to work on assignments and create a few more assignments now that you have groups set up so you know how to do that? I just want to make sure we give you enough time to try things without putting too much information on your plate at one time.
Diane, I was asked if we could show one more time how to set up those groups. Could we go through that one more time?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
All right. So when I go to assignments over in the course navigation bar, you're going to come to your assignment page. And you have two options. If you have current standard groups that you don't want, you can come over to the kebab over here and you can simply edit that category. Maybe. Or if you want to create all new groups and then just go in and delete the groups. So that's the one thing I did forget to tell you. Make sure you don't leave any extra groups in here. So if you create your own, then make sure you go and you delete the extra assignment. So I'm going to actually, I'll create a group here. Okay, so I'm going to create maybe. All right, created a duplicate standard 3. All right. So you notice anything you add always goes to the bottom. Okay, so say I decided this group, even though it's a similar name, I want that to be my group instead of this other group. So I'm going to drag anything I have in that group into the new group and then make sure that you delete this. And then make sure if you, like I just did, so now I'm gonna go back to my assignment group weights. And now I have to make sure that I correct and make sure I put the correct amount in here for that new group that I just created. But you wouldn't do that. I mean, that's an after. So I'll go through just doing the creating groups one more time. I'm actually gonna go into a different course, so you can see it. Okay, so again, practice to learn. There is not going to be a specific rubric for practice to learn because we want you to attach, so I'll show that next. We want to show, where the students are practicing those standards. And so I'll show that here in a minute. So I'm going to go into a different course and show this from scratch so you can see how to set up assignment groups better. Let's see here. I got so many templates on here. Trying to find one that I don't have. Nope. Maybe this one. Okay. All right. So you notice this one just has assignments in it. So I'm going to go ahead and hit plus assignment. Sorry, plus group. I'm going to name it I'm going to just do something different, standard A, so I'd go SA. I could even do, if I decide I want to change that little code, again, you would go to the 3 kebabs and edit. I'm going to put A here instead of SA. Okay, so again, if I want to hit another group or make another group, I'm going to go up to the plus group. And then I'm going to do my practice to learn. All right, then when you're done, you have all your groups created. Make sure any extras that you don't plan on putting anything, you delete it. So it doesn't show up for the student or the parent and then showing nothing in it. Okay, so some of the more upper level secondary, just a reminder that again, your classes are by semester. So if you know that you aren't gonna cover some of your standards during first semester, then make sure you don't put that in as a group. Just those until second semester. So only focus on the standards outcomes that you're gonna actually teach during that semester. If you're a full year course, then you're gonna wanna put all of this in here because your grade is cumulative over the entire year. Okay, all right. So let's talk a little bit about this practice to learn. So I'm gonna go ahead and create an assignment in there and talk a little bit about that while we talk about rubrics, which is our next step. All right, is there anybody who would like a little work time right now? I just really want to be cognizant that we give you time to try things before we go on to the next rubric discussion, which is again, Deb, it has been decided that it's optional, but we want to show you the value of using them with the speed grader. So we're not mandating, you can use just the traditional grade book, which I will be showing you. So again, rubrics are not required, but I do think it is a good feedback tool. We're going to talk about a few different ways you can do that to make it super valuable to save, even maybe save you some time. All right, so I'm going to add an assignment. Just going to add an assignment to practice to learn. I'm going to say PTL. Practice quiz. Again, I'm going to go down to more options, so I have everything there right away. All right, this is just my suggestion. So if you are going to want to make sure that you attach this to a standard when it comes up to the title here, don't have to do this, it's just a suggestion. I'm going to put it standard 1. So it's a practice 1, but it's attached to standard 1. And then I put what the task is. Again, I just think it helps you go back to look to see how many times you've done some practice work in that standard as well, especially if you are weighting it, to look to see at that as additional evidence. Again, you put something up here, add video, a reminder, view sheet, whatever you want to do. Or if you have a link to a PDF at elementary, you learned yesterday that that's a great way to be able to use that, the students to use the markup tool. So if you wanted to embed a PDF file here, you could do that as the assignment. All right, come on. I am really sorry about my computer, you guys. It's the computer. I think it's the internet here. Mm-hmm. All right. Hey, Felicity, do you think you could take on the rubric part? Because I'm going to have to reboot here, I think. I'm going to have to get out of my office or something. I'll keep going here for a little bit,
We
but
can, I was going to say, too, you know, we can take a bio break while you do a restart and kind of get back in. That's totally fine.
I just think it's, people don't want to watch the death wheel here. Okay, so practice to learn. I'm going to make this a letter grade. I want to actually give students that letter grade feedback. Let's do online. I'm going to do text entry. All right, I'm going to make it due on Monday. All right, I'm going to save and publish. Did you talk about the external tool and the rubric or no? Yesterday?
No, we didn't talk about that. We didn't go
Okay.
into rubrics at all.
Okay, sounds good. So I will get there. All right, so when I get to the next screen here, you can go right to SpeedGrader and put a letter grade in there. But then you have to type in all the comments. So here is where I think it would be valuable to attach a rubric. So that's why we put the outcomes in here. Because I have no outcomes. That's right, I didn't do outcomes in this course. I switched courses. Sorry about that. Quickly get outcome in here. All right, so back to this practice to learn. I'm going to edit it. Sorry. All right, then I'm going to get to the plus rubric. So I'm going to show you 3 different things about rubrics today. So I'm going to show you the way that we did it last year. I'm going to show you a way that you can customize your own rubric. And I'm going to also talk about how we can actually take the outcomes, customize the rubric for you on the back end, just like the other outcomes are in there for you. And also show you how you can actually create your own text box to put in your own comments right on the rubric. So actually 4 ways. So let's see how the computer goes. I'm going to start. If it gets really sluggish, we might have to take a bio break for me to reboot my computer. So if I hit plus rubric, first thing you're going to want to do is you're going to want to delete this generic default box that comes up from Canvas. So we're not on a 5-point scale. All right, I'm just going to give this a name. I'm just going to say this is language arts, some rubric. Okay. So what I want to do is I want to go to find outcome. I'm going to go to my language arts. I'm going to go to standard 1 because I said this is a practice assignment in practice to learn in standard 1. And I'm going to go to standard, I'm just going to pick one. Okay. And I've got the one I want picked. I'm going to hit import. All right. So you have this. Then the other thing you want to make sure that you do is you want to make sure that you use this rubric for assignment grading and then hit create rubric. Okay. Option number 1. So these are the rubrics we put in with the learning outcome and then with the very generic wording here of what this letter grade means. Okay. All right. Anyone need to see that again?
Can you show me, what did you delete?
Yep. So I'll just start all over so you can see it again. So when I hit plus rubric, you will get this default screen that comes up. You're going to go to this delete box right here and get rid of this up here. So you get a screen like this. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Then you're going to go to find outcome. And then to find the outcomes you have in here. I just chose 1.2 this time. Some of you only have 1 under your standards. Okay. So, and then here's the key though, is if you want to use the here to grade in SpeedGrader, which we'll show you in a little bit, you're going to want to make sure that you use this for assignment grading. If you just want it to display here for students, so parents, so they see what the outcome was and what the scale is, but you're going to enter it through the gradebook manually, I guess I'd use that term. You do not need to do this. Only if you are going to use on the rubric, you want that to go directly into the grading book. Okay. All right, then I'm going to hit create rubric, and this is what I would get. Okay. All right, so I'm going to show a second way that I've kind of been toying around with things. And again, Canvas is working to try and give us more options in this rubric formatting. Right now, it's just everything kind of goes into one lump, so it's really hard to make it look defined, I guess, like you're used to seeing it in a Google Doc or a table that you've created. But I'm going to show you what I've done. So I'm going to go back to outcomes, and I'm going to go to a different. Okay, so I actually created some criteria specific rubrics here. So I'm going to go ahead and import those. And this is based on the English, junior high English standards. So they were cordial enough to share those with me. Okay. So I'm going to show you what that looks like. Maybe. Okay, so now I've also have, so if you have multiple groups of standards that you want into your, to use on assignments, you have to import them each individually to be able to attach them to an assignment. So I'm going to go back to assignments. I'm going to say it's in this group. So I'm going to hit plus assignment for standard A. All right, I'm going to go ahead and hit more options right away. All right, so I'm going to say this is standard 1. Maybe. Standard 1 is my code. And I'm going to say that this is, oh, I don't know. Curious George, can't spell. I'm really bad this morning. Thank you. Curious George reading reflection or something like that. So maybe you want to put a couple review tips on here, give some directions. If you don't want to use a rubric, I know Felicity showed some of her assignments, I think yesterday, where she puts the I can statements in here, which we posted on the front page. All right, can everybody see that okay? All right. All right, so we're in assignments, talking about rubrics. Okay, so I'm in a class that I've been in since probably last February, so there's quite a bit more in this course. So you can see kind of now why we want these standard groups to be set up the way they are is, so now you see how they all are aligned in here. So when you have to go to the grade book, which I'll show you in a bit, you're able to sort these very easily. It also kind of gives you an idea as a instructor of how much have you utilized the standard. So if I would just scroll through here, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, so I'm going to go to one of these. I'll just go to this assignment 2. I was hoping to find one that, right, so, oh, this is an 8-point rubric, of course. Or let's leave it at 8 points for now. I'm sorry, I'm just going to go back and create a new assignment. So I don't have to say, oh, you won't see this, you won't see this. So I'm just going to create an assignment in this standard 1 group. So standard 1. Okay. Put directions or list learning outcome goals in this box. Whatever, you can put a video there, whatever you want to do. I'm just kind of putting a placeholder there. All right, so here's that 4 points. Again, it's in the standard 1 group. Going to display a letter grade. Okay, and I'm just going to use the text entry submission for now. We'll say it's due on Tuesday. And I'm going to hit save and publish. All right, so the next screen is where you'll see this plus rubric button. Okay, again, my screen is really big so you can see it better. Yours is probably going to be smaller. All right, so here's plus rubric. So I did some experimenting this summer. So again, I'm going to delete this box here. And I'm going to go to find outcomes. So I took outcomes that were already created and I went in and added criteria specific for this outcome. So I'm going to say analyze text and provide evidence. So I don't know, it's going to be hard to show this on this bigger screen here. But as you can see here, under the A level, I still put we left the header of what that means, but here's some very specific criteria or kind of expectation, learning goals. What do you want the student to learn under the standard if they're at an A level? How did they demonstrate that? So so at the A, B, and C levels, I went and customized this rubric to be attached to those goals or to those outcomes. You know, it's the B level. So here's the downside right now until Canvas gets those formatting options to us. Everything just comes in here in a block. So this little asterisk was kind of my way of, because the teachers had given it to me in bullet points. That was the only way I could get it to differentiate those different areas. But at least there's some more. Because what I noticed in fourth quarter is a lot of teachers were spending a lot of time typing in these very comments. So one of the ways that if you really want to use similar comments is we can create this rubric for you. So when you go to SpeedGrader, it's already there for you. You don't have to sit there and type that, and you can just make some general comments to a student. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and use this rubric. I think I have to go all the way over here on my big screen. Where is it? Sorry. Guys, I have to make this smaller. There it is. Okay, import. So here is the downside is, again, it doesn't look very pretty, but the text is there. Okay, so again, you would hit use this rubric and you can create rubric. So instead of having just the very generic wording of what an A, B, and C means here, you actually have some specific criteria to help the student understand why they might have gotten that grade for this assignment. And in this rubric here, I probably would have named it like reading 1 rubric, because then you can go back and use that rubric all the time. All right. So when you go to SpeedGrader, obviously then that student's submission would be here. When you hit the rubric, you would see it over here. So when you click on it, then this is what would show up instead of just the generic terminology. And you can still go ahead and add comments there just like you would. All right, here's another option. So option 1 is just use the rubrics or the outcomes as they are with the generic definitions of an A, B, and C. We can customize that, use the same outcomes that you had listed here, but put your customized thing in here. So option 3, I'm going to go back I'll start here, I guess, on this assignment, and I'll just go back to assignments. So your other option is you can actually customize your own rubric, okay? Let's see, do I have one that, I was hoping I have one that wouldn't have a rubric on here. This is a discussion, of course. All right, so I'm just going to go ahead and use this one. Again, you guys, I'm sorry, I have to make this a little smaller. It's really hard for me to navigate on my smaller screen here. I'm going to go ahead and delete this so it looks like what you would start with. So if I hit plus rubric, and so I'm going to say I'm going to use language arts. I'm going to say it's a standard 2. All right, so here, down here, whoops, I forgot to delete this box here. So when you get to this point, you can start here, but if you want to write your own free-form comments, you click on this box, it leaves what the outcome is here, and then when you go to SpeedGrader, which I'll show you in a minute, you can actually type in, or if you have a rubric you use for a specific within this learning outcome, but you already have a rubric created, you could put the criteria right in here. So I'm going to hit create rubric. So when I go to SpeedGrader now, I hit view rubric. So I can type in, so here's the criteria. I can type in, or I could cut and paste. So I could say student demonstrated X, Y, and Z, or whatever. We're not going to try to figure anything out. Or if you have a rubric on your computer and you just want to cut and paste in that comment for what an A or a B or whatever grade you're going to give them, you can also, once you have it in there, you can save it for the next time you attach this outcome as well. And then when you start typing, it'll be in there. So when I hit save, oops, I have to go ahead and here now I can also manually enter that 3.5 grade and hit save. So instead of putting your comments here, you can put the comments right into the rubric. Okay. And did I not? I thought I saved that. What's going on here? Huh. Oh, that's, where'd it go? Thought I had saved, didn't I? Oh, that's really weird. It's supposed to hit, all the other times I've demoed it, it goes right in here. Okay, that just made me look really silly. I don't know why this is on here either. Select comments 3.5. Okay. So I don't know if I have to go. I will look at that later, but it is supposed to, when you put that in for that student, that comment goes right there. So maybe when we go to the grade book, we will see that. So then that last option, when you go to rubric, so if I don't want to go over that because I want to see if that went there. Plus rubric, you can actually create your own rubric right here, okay? So if I want to create standard 1 rubric, whatever your standard 1 might be called, So the issue is, though, you have to go through every single box, and so you'd have to put in your own criteria or your own rubric here. So I have 1.1, so whatever you have as your learning outcome, you can put it in here. Blah, 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 okay? So then this would be your outcome, and then each time here, you'd have to hit a plus, and then it asks you to put actually in the rating title, which would be your A, B, C. For elementary, your E, P, I can't remember what all those are. But whatever your category is. So but you'd have to go through here and edit each of them each time if you wanted to do it that way, and then take off this comment here. So again, if you wanted to customize it, you'd start and you'd make it a 4-point scale. I'm going to say that this is a, and then I would put my description here. And then to get to the next category, I'd hit plus. And this would be the AB. So putsy, but you can create your own rubric right in here if you would choose to do that. Okay, so I'm just going to create it half finished. All right, so time is it? 9:32. Into the grade book. So teacher's standpoint, you're just going to hit the grades button. Before I do that, I kind of wanted to show you over here home screen. You notice I have a to-do list that pops up here. So I have two different, I'm both a teacher and a student in this course. So I have things that I need to do. I need to have these 3 things graded, but then as a student in this course, I also have to make sure that I turn these things in. So this is what the students would see. This is what you're going to see when students turn things in. It's actually going to tell you what you need. You have some things to grade. And then also, again, you have that 7-day kind of big picture view here that students see, and that tells them about what's coming up. So again, that's another important feature, is to use that due date feature for students and parents. Okay. All right, so now I am going to go into the gradebook feature and just kind of talk to you about some things there. So again, you notice here grades, you notice that I have 8 things waiting for me to grade in the gradebook in this course. So I'm going to go into grade. If you've not been in here, you're going to notice that it also looks much like a traditional gradebook would look like. And so you are free to only use this part to enter grades. You don't have to use the rubric. The only thing is when I enter grades in, like if I would enter a grade directly from here and not use a rubric, I have to use the point total. Even though it's going to look like a letter grade, I still have to put the point totals, and that is because of how we want the rubrics and this grade to calculate the same. I know that's probably a little bit more than what you want to know or need to know, but it is really important. How Canvas has their grading scale set up is if you would put the letter grade, it would actually calculate at the top end of that range scale instead of that where we feel kids should be in that middle range. So again, you put in a point total, it will calculate and show up as a grade, but you have to put it in as a point total. Put in something that's not right, it will tell you. It won't translate it because it's translating off of that 4 point, etc. Okay. All right. Let's just finish that one. Okay. All right. So a couple features. View. So again, I'm at the top above my view book or my grade book view. If I this drop-down menu here, I can arrange my assignments. So going across here, well, actually, I want to go to filters first. Sorry. So we're going to go back to arrange filters. So you notice I have two things checked. So I'm going to uncheck them so you can see what it looks like without them checked. All right. So I'm going to go to filters, and I want to be able to filter by assignment group. So I'm able to look at an assignment group. And again, another great reason why we wanted you to do this by standard is so that you can look at all the information you have, all the learning evidence you have in there for that learning standard by just that group, so that you don't keep scrolling and figuring out, well, where is that assignment or where is that assignment? Because it can get very overwhelming. All right. So now you have that drop-down menu. So right now I have all assignment groups. So if I want to just look at practice to learn assignments, like how are they doing? Are they turning in? Aren't they? Those kind of things. Again, I have a lot of in here, but because it's a demo account, I don't go through and grade everything. But you notice that I can and do those kind of things. The other one that's going to be very helpful, especially if you have multiple sections of the same course, we're going to show you how to cross. It's called cross listing. So you're actually merging those classes into one course for yourself, so that you don't have to post the same thing in multiple different places. But then you can actually look at those student groups, which this will say sections right here. So you're going to want to filter by sections. I'm just going to put student group so it's there. Okay, so I do have a couple groups in here. So if I want to sort and only look at my Canvas level 1.1 learners, I can click on it. I can see how they're doing in the standard. I could say all groups. I could see how they're doing. So these filters really help make this gradebook manageable. I'll show you where those things, it's under view. When I click on the drop down, it's under filter. And then you're going to go to assignment groups, and you're going to go to student groups. If you feel like it's helpful, more helpful to you, you're going to be able to see modules. You can also do it that way. So now you see I don't have anything because there were no modules in these courses. Here is my first thing that I would have in that module as an assignment. So if you know that you're working on a current moment in time, you might want to also include the modules filter. I'm going to take that off of there just because I don't have much in there. All right. So then if you go back to the view, so you have these up here, and these will always be to your access here. So you can choose what standard you want to look at, or the practice to learn category. And then you can also look at it by individual groups or sections, this will say, once your live courses are up and running. So you can look at it by each section. If you do set up student groups, great way also then to look at how the groups are doing. All right, I'm going to go back to view. Just like in any database, you're going to have options to sort. Do you want it oldest to newest? Do you want it by letter? Assignment name, again, great reason for putting this in by your assignment name, because now I have them all together by assignment name. Oops. I'm just going to go to default. And again, if you are a big module user, you might want to look at it by module, looking at first to last. Your most recent module or grading that you've done is in there, closest to the front of the course. All right. Now, most of you notice that I have the total column right here next to the student's name. You might not see that. You might see yours, again, way at the end. Take any of these categories here, any assignments, you can take them and drag and drop them anywhere you want. So all I did is I took that standard group. So say I want the high grade, and I want it to be over here by up by my total here. Again, I have quite a bit in here, so where did that end up going? Just override. It takes a couple times to get it up there. There we go. Oh, I'm just going to drag it so it gets to the front of the pack, so to speak. And once you do that, then it will stay there. You don't have to do this each time. So override thing mean? There is a feature here. I must have it checked on, which I can show you. Means if you want to override a student's grade, you have the ability to do that. Okay. So if it's a BC and you say, I really feel at this moment in time, Gina's true reflection is going to be a B. I feel she's more like a B student than a BC student. I'm not sure why it's calculated that way. So the issue is this override stays in place until you change it. So even if she would drop to a C or an LP, it would always show up as a B unless you change it. So that is the one downside of doing that, but it is an option. All right, actions. Really not much here, unless you want to export your grades into an Excel spreadsheet, which doesn't look pretty, format it, but you can also export it into an Excel spreadsheet, and that's probably the only reason you would want to go to the actions menu. Gradebook, really not much there either. If you want to check the history, like, oh my gosh, I messed something up and I need to go back and change it. You go back to gradebook history, you can actually choose the student and what the assignment was and the date. So the last date that you entered it prior to today. So if I went to, let's bring up a calendar, which is nice. So if I want to go a week to see what these grades were for these students, I can always go back in and I can see what those grades are and go back in and change it prior to that time. So you do have a way of recovering grades if something happens that it gets messed up. Okay, so that is a nice little feature, but that's the only time you use that gradebook history. All right, back to grades. All right, within the grading part, there is this little cog wheel over here. I'm going to show you that next. So if you are in the middle of, you have 3 sections, you have a bunch of papers, you really just want to make sure that you have at least one class done before you publish it. All the do that. So you can go into grade posting policy and you can hit manually post grades. So the only thing about when you go to the manually post, if you're making comments to students, those will not show up until after you automatically post the grades or post them. Okay. So that is one thing that kind of people ran into last year as they were working and they really wanted kids to see the comments they were putting on there, but not the grade just yet. Then so you can put grades in or comments in and students will see those and you don't have to put a grade on an assignment, but they will still see the comments, which we will show you where to find those in a little bit. So I'm going to leave that one at automatic for now, but you can turn it off and then use to turn it back on. When you do it from this cog over here, excuse me, you will notice that I had a couple of these also had little eyeballs next to them. So you will see when you do it from this is for the whole entire grading. Every grade that you enter, any grade will remain visible, but when you post new grades, then they will not be visible. And you will know these, I'm not sure why it's not showing up here, but you have to know that that's turned on. The way I would recommend doing it rather than here from this overall category is I would go into the individual assignment that you want to wait to post. So again, anytime you see these 3 little dots here, the kebab, you know that there's more underlying underneath here. I'm just gonna turn this all back on. Not that there's much more in here, but for grades. Okay, oops. All right, so when I click on this little kebab, there's more features underneath it. Okay, again, you have a sort feature for this. So if you really want to kind of get a really bird's eye view of how the class is doing overall, you can see how many are missing and how many are late. All right, you can access, this is a feature, you can access SpeedGrader right from this menu as well in the gradebook, which is a new feature. I think it's a great feature, so you don't always have to go back to the assignment. This message students who, I'm going to go to a different assignment to demonstrate this. I'm going to go to this one. So you can go through here. If you notice there's a lot of students who are really behind on this, I'm going to say have scored less than a 3. It brings up those names of the students that have scored less than 3, and it actually tells you what their score is. If you want to say scored more than 3, and you want to give them a nice positive note, you can do that as well. So this message you type in here, and it goes to each individual student. Who else gets the message? It goes to each individual student. Okay. I'm just put in here great work and reflection on this assignment. Appreciate your extra effort to get this completed on time and to a very high level of achievement or something. Okay, send this message. And they would get this message right through Canvas. Okay. All right, so it's a nice little feature. Okay. You can hit a set default grade. So I'm going to go to an assignment that I don't have graded. Okay, so I'm going to go over here. So say I am getting ready and I notice, you know what, quite a few of these students did really well on this. I can actually set the default grade, and I'm going to put it to be 4 out of 4. And I'm going to hit that as a set default grade. Just like if you've ever used the fill feature in Infinite Campus, it does the same thing. So this automatically, and again, I had this assignment set up in points, it looks like. I'm going to go to that and fix that quickly. So demonstrate that. All right, so that was external one. All right, so here was this. This is the one I just did. So you notice it filled all A's. So then if I say, okay, well, I think when I went through and assessed it, Jason was at an A, B, and maybe Jeff C was at a B, I can go through here and I can change that. Again, if you're changing a grade, I made this mistake up here, put it as the point total, not as if you change it. Okay, so a nice little feature to fill grade. If I go here, here is where I would hide the grades. So if this is a really long assignment, it's going to take you a couple days, but you really don't want grades to come out as you get them, enter them. You can go ahead and hide grades until you are ready. And you can even do it by specific sections up here if you want to. Again, it asks which course, but in that course. And then, again, a reminder that submission comments, notifications, all those things would not display until you unhide it. So I'm going to just unclick this. I'm going to hit hide. Computer was working pretty well before. And now you notice you get this little icon at the very top of the assignment. So the eyeball means is that it is hidden from the viewer's view. Okay. So when I am ready for them to see this, so I've entered all this information, entered the comments, I'm ready for this section to see it. I then go to this 3 dots here and I simply hit grades. Do I want it to see everybody or only those have graded? You can make that choice. How you want to do that. If you have half of them done and you want those kids to see those grades, then I would go ahead and post that. And it's thinking. I'm going to turn my picture off, thinking it would work better. All right. Notice that the eyeball actually went away, so it now means it's visible to students. Any questions on those features? There's really, the other ones, we're keeping this all the same, so nothing really to do there. Okay. Any questions on any of the tools? Oh, the one thing I did, sorry, mainly for, so when you go and enter a grade, there is also some additional options. There's this little arrow. So how did I do that again? So when I click on it into a grade box, so say I put a 1 here. I can go to this menu, this little extra arrow, and I get these options here. So the letter grade is an LP, okay, and late 20 days missed late. It even calculates based on the due date. So the student actually did do it, but it was late. Maybe you want to really note it, make sure that you note that. And you can also leave a comment here from this angle, or you can go directly to the SpeedGrader. So lots of options from that little drop-down menu. So if you go in here and let's say you put an NE, and you want to make a note that it's an NE, meaning that it is missing, and you just want to notate that. Okay. Again, nice feature. However, downside is when you change this NE to a grade, then you have to also go in and take off that color coding. It doesn't automatically change once you change that into a different grade. So putsy, but yet some good information there. Any questions on any of that before I go into kind of what it looks like from view?
Diane, did you already talk about hiding grades and posting manually? And if you hide them, that students will not see any of that feedback that you give?
Yep, I did.
Okay, sorry. Trying to answer questions and stay attentive.
Yep.
Tricky.
Absolutely. Yep. It's always good to check though. Okay. Anything else in the chat that you think we should address before I go into what it looks like from a student view?
Or please, it might be quicker if you want to come off of mute and ask as well.
Yeah.
I think the key is when you're using this, if you're not going to use the rubrics for grading and you're just going to enter grades right from here, is just really super important that you use the points that go along with the grade and not enter the grade. It will show as a letter grade, but you want to enter it as the correct points.
Are you still recommending that we use the iPad for entering grades like we did last year? And if so, does that mean that we have to have a rubric if we are using the iPad?
You do not have to have a rubric. You would go just like, so I'll if I can, how quickly I can do it. Try to go to one of these. Trying to find one that I didn't have a rubric attached. Here we go. All right, so you notice I don't have a rubric here, but the SpeedGrader still shows up here. So you can still go to the SpeedGrader and just enter a letter. by points if you want. Or you can use that I showed you as much faster if you're just going to enter points. No need to go to SpeedGrader. So SpeedGrader we find is the easiest when you want to view on, which maybe is a good time just to go into that. Tammy, if you're ready to show SpeedGrader and how you see the student information right next to it, and then being able to do the grades on the other half of the screen. I think it's just, and then you can mark up and give comments that way too on the SpeedGrader. You can do it on the laptop too. It's just not, you don't have the Apple Pencil or stylus options to circle things, do those kind of things. You can still, make text boxes and highlight things from the laptop, but you just don't have as many options for annotating on top of student feedback. So, Tam?
I'm going to go ahead and here's what I'm going to show, just a few things on this course. When I come in to my dashboard, there were a couple of questions about the sidebar. And what you're going to notice here is that these are all of my courses. And with all of my courses, I do have a to-do list that's marked on my dashboard, but this to-do list is for every courses. Now, when I come into my specific course, and the one that I'm going to go in today is a sandbox course in which I've been playing in, and I'm going to go back into that sandbox course. And now when I come into my sandbox course, you're going to notice that the dashboard changes a little bit. Now what I have is I have my course navigations for my instructor view are here. And then over here from my side view, you're going to notice that my to-do list changes a little bit. And that to-do list now just goes to the assignments that I have to grade for my students within this course. So over here, I've made just a couple of assignments that we're going to go into the SpeedGrader, and I'm going to take you through a tour of what the SpeedGrader would look like. And this is from your Mac. So this is the Mac side of that. Another question that I got, really, really great questions. I'm going to come back over to my course navigation. And from my course navigation, the first button that I'm going to go into as an instructor is my assignment button from that course navigation. So I'm going to come right over here. I'm going to click on my assignments. And here was one of the questions that I had gotten within the chat. And what the question was is, when we come into this assignment view, how do our assignments populate and what do they look like? So once again, these are my assignment groups. So these gray bars, I have an assignment group called demo assignments. And then down here, I just have another assignment group called assignments. And I have one for discussions, one for individual assignments. You made those assignment groups before. But these are your assignment groups, and this is the way that they would view. And then when your assignments come into those assignment groups, the way that they populate in here is they populate from your very first assignment all the way down to the most recent in that category. What you're going to notice is, do you notice how some of these are green? The reason why they're green is because I have them published. I have other assignments that I have not published. So that's how I see this from the assignment view. Yesterday, what we did is we learned about modules. And remember, modules are that linear flow. Flossie did a great job of explaining how those modules are put together, kind of like a binder of content that we've used. I'm going to go into the module view over here. So when I come over here to my module view, from my module view, what I did is I just put my practice assignments for today within a module. So over here, I have that assignment guide, and then I have a couple of practice assignments that we're going to take a look at on the SpeedGrader. But you will see them in that module view in this listing. You can see that listing is a little bit different. So they exist in both places, but that workflow is just a little bit different. So I hope that that answered that question. I'm going to go back to my course dashboard, that home page. And when I'm on this home page, I'm going to access my speed grader over here for my to-do list. So I'm going to go ahead and I can click on this first graded assignment that I had. And you can see I have a student in here, and Brian Engelbrecht says, and it's my student. And this was a video assignment. So this video assignment, and these are examples right from that assignment guide. We had the student do just a little, and I'm going to bring back that example that we used yesterday. We did a photojournalism assignment. We set that assignment up, and it does come into the speed grader like this from that student. When we come into the speed grader, let's just take a tour of the speed grader as you're coming in as an instructor. So from your Mac, when you come in, you have an icon over here up at the top. And when I hover over it, what you're going to see is you're going to see that it says gradebook. If I were to click on that, where it brings me is it brings me into that gradebook. One very important feature that we have to remember, and I did make a mistake last week when or a couple weeks ago when we were taking a look and I couldn't figure out why my grades weren't showing up. And I've had many teachers go, my grades just aren't showing up. And Diane went through that little eyeball up there. When you see the eye and there's an X through it, it means that that assignment is not visible to your students. So any assignment that you want to make sure that your students can see, you want to make sure, and there's a couple of places where that eyeball shows up. And one is in each of the categories within that grade book. If you have that assignment hidden, you need to make sure that it is available for those students to see.
Tammy,
Yes,
is there a
yes.
way you can highlight your arrow like you have?
Oh, yes, so sorry. Yes, I forgot to turn on my assistant. I appreciate that. Thank you for asking.
Thanks.
Okay. Yep. Okay, can you see now? Is that better? Okay. Sorry about that. So yes, that will bring you into the grade book. And then what we'll see here is here's that eyeball again. So that eyeball, what we can see, it shows up again within the speed grader. And what I'm hoping everybody can see is that the eyeball is now on. And what that's indicating is that my students can see that assignment and the students will be able to see that feedback. So that's really important that we check that in both places that it's on for those students. So what we see here is this is called my video assignment. And now from experiencing that, I want to make sure that it's on so my students can see that. So I've got my video assignment on. I'm just going to check in the grade book over here. I'm going to bring myself back into that view. I can check over here and I marked it just with a little icon. Yes, it's on for sure. But what that means is now when I start grading, like Diane was saying, students will be able to see those results live. And that's what we're going to demo right now. If that eyeball is off because you have a long assignment that you're grading, they will not see those assignments. But don't forget to turn that back on, because I've had situations where teachers express my students aren't getting the feedback, they're not seeing it. And it was all because of the eyeball. So that was one important feature. I learned a lesson the hard way, right? Big fail. First attempt in learning, the eyeball is super important. And it even reminds you when you hover over it, post or hide grades. Next, we have the little settings wheel within here, and there are options. One feature I do, the shortboard or the keyboard shortcuts, is that it will give you, if you click on there, ideas of how you can use these features to make yourself a little more efficient. And when we say a little more efficient, we know that time is very valuable. So you can learn some of those keyboard shortcuts and use those to help work smarter, not harder. And then also there's a help button in here. I'm going to click on the options, and the options allow you to set up the way you would like to sort your students. So you can sort them by name, by the date they submitted the assignment, or by the submission status. So you have options there as well. I like to see my students' names, but you have the opportunity to hide that as well. And remember, always make sure that you're saving your settings. All right, there we go. I have my settings saved. Now over here, what you're going to see is general assignment statistics. So what it's saying is that out of the 5 assignments that we have here, it's just telling me I don't have any of them graded. 1 assignment was submitted out of the 5, and those are the statistics for each particular student. You'll see the student's picture, you'll see their name, and now from this little caret, what you're going to see is that it will put a little yellow dot next to the student that has submitted their work. Diane, you're late with your work, and a number of people in here, and you will also have a test student that comes in to test as a teacher as well. This little arrow right here, I do not have another graded assignment for this. So over here, that little arrow would move to the next graded assignment within this assessment. So if I use that arrow, it would move us over in that direction. So here what I can do is I did add a rubric. With the rubric, what I can do is I can go ahead and after I view the assignment, and what I do like about this assignment is my suggestion is that awesome guide that Felicity built, I would go through, I would put a student within your course. And then what I would do is I would go through and I would practice submitting assignments in each one of those variations to see what works best with the assignments that you are going to have your students submit. One piece of using an LMS that was really frustrating to me is there were times that I would have students do a lab report. I would then tell them to submit it in a certain way. And I remember the frustration that I felt was like, oh my gosh, I have 140 students. I have 140 lab assignments coming in, and now I have to download every one of these files. And 100% now that I can reflect back on best practices, it was my fault. I set up the assignment wrong, and I was getting really mad at PowerSchool because I thought it was PowerSchool just acting wonky. It really was myself not understanding the tool. So I understand that this is robust. I understand that it is sometimes it takes time to learn. But if you practice that guide, what you are going to find is you're going to find that you will identify the best way to submit each one of your assignments. Before I go into grading this, I know it's going to feel like I'm going back a little bit, but I just want to go back in and I want to show you from that guide, what did I do? So I'm going to go back over here. I'm going to go back to my dashboard. And over here, underneath this assignment, and I put that little icon on there so I could easily find it. Here's my video assignment. How did I set this up? We keep talking about our assignments and how we set it up. So here's my sample assignment. This was a video assignment. What I did is I just gave the brief directions about share your video journalism story, and I could have been working this out. Now, the end result of our study of photojournalism, we did some writing, we're practicing presenting in a fun, creative way. And now what I did is I put in here the directions for students to submit their video, telling them the best way to turn this in, click on Safari. Now we're going to log into Canvas from the Safari browser. We want you to go to your assignment and select text entry. I want you to select file upload. I want you to select your file. From your camera roll, tap use, and then tap submit. The reason why you want those directions in there is because on your end, as a teacher, it is going to save you a lot of time. What you're going to notice, I'm going to go back to my dashboard, my course dashboard, from my side view, I'm going to go into the speed grader. What is so awesome about this? Look what I don't have to do. I don't have to download that video and wait for it. It's already here for me to assess. I'm going to click on it. And so I can watch the video. And now what that does is that saves me time. I can go to the rubric. On the rubric, it gives general information. I can click on the rubric that we're using to give that feedback. I do need to hit save here. So now that will go in as the grade. And then what I can do is I can give this student personalized feedback. I can either attach a document. If I have a younger student, I can record voice. I can record media in the form of like a video because I haven't seen my students in a while. So I'm going to go ahead and start recording. Wow, how engaging. I really like how you memorized your script and then went to the location where you were doing your photojournalism project. That was great work. Awesome. I can finish. I can hit save. And it might take just a little bit of time for that to render. Come on. Okay. And there is my video back to my student. I'm going to hit submit. I can also add a comment if I would like. And now when I go back, oh, I can come back over here. And now when I click my arrow, what it's going to show me is you're going to see, it's going to show me the next person in the grade book does not have a submission. So I can go ahead, I can go back to my dashboard. What I will notice is I will notice that now, oops, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to go back to my dashboard. Meant to go back to my course card on that front facing page. I'm going to notice that it's already graded and I can take that off of my to-do list. Okay. Are there any questions how I did that? Scott, I see that you're asking if screen capture video is possible. Remember, that would save as a file, and then you would have to upload that file from your computer with that upload button. Those assignment instructions, those are given. Felicity made videos. In those videos, what I did is I chose to put them in there. Not only you can add a video in there, but what you can also do from those videos is I prefer to put the instructions in there step by step. And then with those step by instructions, remember you will have those instructions. And then what you can do is just copy and paste them in each one of your assignments to ensure the students know the steps, because it's going to be really important to teach your students best practice of turning in those assignments.
And actually that guide that I just posted in the chat with Audrey, those
Yes.
guides actually have YouTube videos. Then the YouTube video shows the teacher perspective on how to set that assignment up, and it also shows the student perspective on how to submit. And so my suggestion is to share that video with your students. And when you share a video within YouTube, you can actually select the exact starting point of where you want that video to start. So you can kind of get that playhead to right where it starts with student instructions and share that out with your students. I'm sure they'll need that up front in the beginning until it becomes more of a habit and a routine. Yeah, if you want to show it really quick, Tammy.
Absolutely. So I built out this module, and right at the top of the module is that guide that Felicity is talking about. And it's phenomenal. you can come in here, and where you're at with the videos is you can go ahead when you click on this guide. And I know some of us weren't in the training yesterday. So what we note here is that within these videos, and I'm just going to stop the video. If we want to share this video, we can go to share. And then what we can do is we can embed that video. So, but down here, there's a great little button. When we hit start, you can actually tell that video exactly where to start. So you can start it for the students at that point. You can copy the link, and then you can share the link with your students within your assignment. So let's say with that
Yeah,
assignment.
just to be clear,
that I was
Tammy, you had
just-
said, sorry, you had said embed the video.
I'm
Don't
sorry.
ever embed a video from YouTube.
No, I'm so sorry.
Just copy the link and post it. Yeah, that's
My
okay.
apologies. I'm going to show you right now how to do that. I clicked on the copy the link. Thank you. You do not want to embed a video, because if you embed a YouTube video, they will not play for students. But where I'm going to go back to is I'll go back to that module. And let's say that I wanted to put that link in those assignment instructions. I can go back to that assignment. And then what I did is I wrote out the directions here. I want to make sure that I hit edit. I can come into this assignment, and I'm going to go here. And when I hit return, it brought me a little bit, but then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to hit. And you can see it will bring in that video, but I put a link there. I did not embed that. Reason why I don't want to embed it is because, once again, to make sure that we're very, very clear, if you embed a YouTube video, it will not play for your students. We need our students to be signed into their DC Everest YouTube account. And I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to go down to the bottom. I'm going to save that assignment. And now what you're going to see is that video will play. And you see the little dots there? I set it to that point when I hit share. I put it at that specific time to start sharing, and it will share just from that point. One other feature that we don't want to forget, I'm going to bring us back to my homepage within this course. We also have that student view. I'm going to go to the student view. I'm going to go into that, and I can access this because, remember, this is my course navigation that I set for my students. I want to bring them into that assignment so they can go ahead. And you noticed it looked like I had a lot of assignments, didn't it? But I have them in here for a student. Here's that video assignment that we were just taking a look at. And now here's what the student will see. Here are the directions. And now I have that YouTube video in there as well for them. So you can do that. So you could put it in there as directions, and you could also put that YouTube video in there as a link for those students. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to leave that student view. I'm going to go back to my home. Now I have another
Tammy,
example.
Can
Yes.
you talk about how you put the link in those directions? Go through that part one more time.
Absolutely. Yes, 100%. Okay, so do you know what I'll do is I'll go into this assignment and we'll put those directions in there as well. Okay, so I'm going to do another assignment, and the assignment that I'm going to go into grade in the speed grader from the computer next is called, and I like to use little emojis in there so I can identify which one that I'm on. And this assignment was using a Google slide, a Google Doc, a Word doc to take a look at a static assignment. What that means is that the student did an essay, the student did a lab report. Let's go ahead and let's take a look at those directions. So I'm going to come over. I'm going to go into that module. that I was just in, and we're going to take a look at the static writing. So this would be an example of a written content that you had your student put in or submit, if you will. So I do have the written assignment or the written directions here on how to do that. In that module, I put that assignment guide, very first thing in here. So let's go to the assignment guide. On the assignment guide, what I have right here is I have that video on how students should submit. When I click on this, it will take me to that YouTube. So this is the teacher view. I'm going to go to I'm going to stop, and I want to start at 41 seconds. I am going to go to the share. I'm going to start that video at 41 seconds. I'm going to copy the link. Oh, make sure that's checked. Okay. I copied it. Now I'm going to go back. And I'm going to go back into my assignment. I'm going to go to that static assignment. Same assignment. I'm going to come up to the edit. I'm going to go down below my directions. I'm going to hit return. I'm going to hit Command V. It will paste that link. When I hit that return button, you can see that it will bring me to that YouTube video. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to hit save. Now, when I hit save, you can see that video will show up in that assignment. So I have my directions. I have the YouTube video for students. So that way they can go ahead and submit. I have the rubric in here. I want to check that from the student view to see what the students are going to see. I'm going to go to my home page. I'm going to go to my sidebar. I'm going to go to student view. It will give me that beautiful pink border around the outside. I can go to my assignment. I can go to, there it is, the static assignment, and let's see what that looks like as directions. And there we go. So the student will have the directions and the student will have the YouTube video that they can play right from there. How to submit that student view. Making great use of that video, making sure that the directions are there. All right, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave that student view. I'm going to go back to my home screen or home page, excuse me. And on my home page, now when I go over here, Brian submitted that assignment. Boy, oh boy, Brian, he's that A+ student of mine, always getting his assignments in on time. I want to make sure that I give him some feedback. I'm going to go into the speed grader. And then what you're going to see here is that this assignment, this is a Google Doc that we put in here that he started the writing. You're going to see this right here was an emoji. And do you see how that came in as an icon? So here was the assignment that he submitted. Now, a couple of things. What we can do is we can go ahead and we can go to the rubric, and then I can grade from the rubric. And the reason why I like grading from the rubric is that there is no confusion about what's going in. I know that the students are getting feedback and they're getting that letter grade and it's being calculated correctly. And I go ahead and I can hit save. You did a nice job. that letter grade is then put in there. We want to make sure that the 4 is going in, and do you see how it populates as the grade? Now, over here, I had troubles with question 3. We can comment by putting uploaded information in here. We can put a media comment in here. We can put speech recognition, which would be like your voice, but you can add comments to the student right here, but you do have to make sure that you do hit submit. So nice work.
So the
Yes.
speech recognition, Tammy, so everybody knows, is you can actually turn it on and speak what you want it to write.
Yes.
A really handy feature.
It sure is. It sure is. Just like dictation on those accessibility features that we went through yesterday, exactly the same thing. So you can go ahead and record. Great work. I really like the way that you used correct punctuation and complete sentences in your answers. What you might have to do is you might have to go back and fix that up, because you can see that it doesn't really put punctuation in there, but it does save time. We can go ahead. Once you have that set up, you can hit submit, and that will give that feedback to that student. Also, what we have over here is we do have features that you can come in and you can add little comment bubbles at specific points within this area. So what you can do is you can add feedback with these tools right within the document as well. So what you're going to see is that right here, your student submissions show up in this window, and the file is really a doc viewer. So in that doc viewer, you can also, as an instructor, annotate. You can give rich feedback directly on one specific point of the assessment, the assignment, whatever you are grading, with the tools within the document viewer as well. One thing that we did over here, so then you can leave your comments. You can leave your comments for your students over here. Like, for example, if you wanted to point out watch punctuation. Okay, so I can leave those comments there and the student will see them. One other piece that we wanted to make sure that we were showing is that, do you see how the student left a file here? Now, this is sometimes what happens, is that if you don't give those explicit instructions for your students, and again, I'm going to come back to being that secondary teacher that had 140 students turning in their assessments. When the student does not turn this in the way that we want, sometimes what they'll do is they'll add a file. With that file, take a look what I have to do. It's the same assignment, but what I have to do is I have to click on it. And when I click on it, what it will do is this will not bring it in here. I had the student put in here, but this means that the teacher would have to download this assignment right here. And when you have to download that, it takes a while, and then you have all these downloads on your computer. So it's really important that there's a difference, making sure that we're very, very clear how those assessments are turned in. Then with that rich feedback, here it is, and the student is able to view that feedback from their student app. Am I going too fast? Are there any questions right now about the speed grader? So you can use the speed grader both on your Mac and on your iPad. What I'm going to do right now is I'm going to bring up the iPad experience for students or for teachers to use the speed grader. How would we give those teachers feedback? I'm so sorry. How would we give our students feedback from the speed grader on our iPad? Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to switch that over. We'll get to our iPad view. So what I'm doing right now is I am using my dongle and I am plugging in, my dongle is plugged into my computer. I am using my USB cord that I charge my iPad with. And what I'm going to go to now is I'm going to go to QuickTime Player on my computer. So I am going to, so I don't make you sick, stop sharing my screen for one moment. And I'm going to bring up QuickTime Player so I can, oops, I almost got myself out of this meeting. Hang on one second. I'm going to bring up QuickTime Player so I can show you the iPad version of the speed grader. And I do often get, Felicity, and I do oftentimes get a lot of about, so is it better to use the speed grader on your computer? Is it better to use it on your iPad? I really like the options, and it depends on the submission type. Okay, like we were just talking about being that secondary teacher. Honestly, as a secondary teacher, if I have a lot of lab reports in that static document, sometimes I prefer to give that feedback right within that comment box. Otherwise, what you can do is if you have a stylus that looks like this or an Apple Pencil, sometimes it's just as easy to give that feedback on those documents for students. And let's show them how, let's take the opportunity to show how this is done. So I'm going to go ahead. So now I'm going under new movie recording. I'm going to my iPad, and now I'm going to go and I'm going to start sharing my screen again. And there were many of you that were asking, how do you share from your iPad? I am more than willing to help any of you learn how to do this. I'm going into QuickTime Player. And now, once again, I've got to make sure that I've got, hey, when I go in this way, I can see the video again. Yay! I'm not sure why my computer was doing that before, but I'm going to make sure too that I have the chat up, and I'm bringing that over to my window. And can my iPad right now? Am I sharing? No, you're not. You can't see my iPad at all. Okay, that wasn't great.
Yeah, I can see it. It looks fine, Tammy.
Yeah,
Oh, it
I can
does.
see it.
Okay, awesome.
Yep.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so where I'm going to go from my iPad, all right, is on my iPad. I am going to go into a Canvas app for teachers, and that's right there. That is the yellow one. Remember, the red one is our student app. So I'm going to go into the Teacher Canvas app, and it's going to look a little bit different when I come in. Holy cow, my dashboard that I typically see with my course cards is now on the left-hand side of my screen. And you can see that I can scroll down. I've got all those goofy courses in there. You won't have that many. And again, please and thank you. I know some of your courses did come in today, like Diane shared, and we had a lot of questions about this. Please do not go in there and do anything at all. I know schedules are not finished. And remember yesterday, and I know we have some new people in today, that within those courses, the reason why you don't want to start going in there and you want to make sure that it's not published because your students are in there and we don't want students to start to get notifications. So for right now, please and thank you, stay in your sandbox. And the sandbox that I'm going to be taking a look at is my sandbox right here where those assignments were coming in. So I'm going to go ahead when I come in, this is my dashboard view. Oops. Down at the bottom, now this is the information for all of my courses. Okay, here's the list view of all of my courses. Here is my to-do list. And over here on the side, this is my inbox. So now that's my dashboard. I'm going to go into my specific course, my sandbox course. And now what you're going to see is here are all of my course navigation tools. Where I'm going to go is I am going to go into assignments. And that assignment that I want to go into is the assignment, remember, was my, the one that we were looking at was that static assignment. And it's going to tell me over here, which ones need grading yet? All right, which ones do I have to grade? So that one I just graded, but now I have, oh, it says that video assignment wasn't graded. I'm going to go into that one. And now from this view, you can see how many need graded, how many were not submitted. And I'm going to go into needs grading. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and click on my student. I thought I had that one graded. We'll make sure that it's graded. Now over here, this is where we have to train our students to take a look because we have 3 tabs. We have the grade tab, we have the comment tab, and then we have the files tab. So each one of those you have to tap on. Those comments that you're giving your students, you need to make sure that you are encouraging them to look in there to get that feedback. So we're going to add our grade. We're going to make sure that we'll add that. Okay. There's my comment. Oh, yep, there's my comment. Students need to look underneath. There was the video that I just recorded for my student to see. Okay, I don't have my iPad audio on. That's why you can't hear that. I should have turned that on when I started my QuickTime Player. I didn't. But then there are files. So if you added files for the student, the files would display there as well. Because sometimes we do like to give an answer key to help students process and see mistakes that they made. So you can add those three pieces of feedback for students. You can add a grade, you can add a comment, and you can show files if you would like to give them an answer key or something along those sorts to help with that feedback. So I can go ahead and I can hit done. Now what this is going to tell me is, hey, Tammy T, this one needs some grading. So I'm going to go into this assignment, which was a markup PDF. I'm going to go, okay. This was an example of an Engage New York math lesson. This is an exit ticket. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into right here. This one needs grading. I had 3 that were not submitted. All right. Brian E is knocking it out of the park. He's doing a great job. It's now loading. And it looks like he came in here and he did some of this work, but whoa, what's going on? Okay, so I can see here that this is not completely submit. This is missing. What I can do from that document viewer, I can go ahead and I can put a comment specifically in that area. So what I can do is I can add a little pin and I can say, why was number 1 missed or skipped? Maybe would be better to say. So you can give feedback here. You skip it? Did you miss it? What can I do? But then that little orange button, what we have to make sure that the students are noting. Oh, look at here. I have a comment from my student. I was not sure about number 2 or number 1. You can see that they made mistakes. What you can do here is you can record audio. You could give a video. Within those comments, you could show that student how to solve those problems if you needed to, or you could set up an office hour. So within here, I'm going to record my audio. I see that it looks like you are having troubles with number 1 and 2. I think it will be best if we set up a time during office hours to meet. I'm going to stop. I'm going to send that audio response. So then that way, and remember, all of this feedback that you're giving to the student, observers can see as well. So what that means is that means that parents, guardians that are viewing, observing this account, they are not able to submit assessments or assignments for students, but they are getting this communication and they are seeing this feedback. We're going to go over here. We're going to take a look at files. Oh, what are the files? That is the PDF of the assignment that you attached. So that way the students can actually, and I left this as a resubmission, so that way students could go back, fix it, and then resubmit again. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to hit done here. And we're going to go, make sure that the grades are put in. As it keeps saying, it needs grading. Add my grade. I'm gonna put C. Okay, so it goes ahead and it puts that in. Now we can see over here that the grade is gone, and I still have one more that needs grading. This one is a working draft. Now, a working draft, I've had, and the reason why I put one like this in here was because one of the questions that I got, and I think it was from a teacher that is in this training today, was can we work on live documents with students? And the answer to this is yes. So this would be of a Google Doc and a student is working on a rough draft. So let's go ahead and let's go into this needs grading. We're going to hit boy, oh boy, Brian E. did all of his homework, top-notch student. So what the student did is the student submitted this assignment, this rough draft, as a Google Doc. And the one thing that I just want to point out and make sure, Google Docs are really like web addresses. So the student needs to share that live link with you. When they share that live link, we can go ahead and we can press on that live link. And what it does is it loads this assignment right in, right within that web link. So now what we can do is we can go ahead and we can start commenting right within the document. Oops, my apologies. We can go down right here. We can start typing. And what the student is getting is that student is getting feedback. I really like, whoop. So now the student would get that information right within the document here. What we could also do is we could highlight if there were certain things that you really wanted the student to know, we could highlight within those tools and so on and so forth. So now I'm going to, oops, go back out of there. I'm going to come back in. And also what I like to do is that, so within here, it was a great start, but you might not want to give a grade because it was a rough draft. It's a work in progress. But what we can notice is that I also, whoops, I'm going to cancel out of there. I'm going to come over here. And then also what I like to do is I like to note over here in the comments section some key points as well. So as you continue to work, you can give comments not only in that student file submission area, you can also make sure that those comments are in the comment section as well. Reason why I like to put these comments in this comment section as well is because if we're over here and that parent or guardian is watching, they're not going to be able to see that live. They could go in and they could look at that live document, but then they see that that evidence has been given for those students also, and they've got those files. So now I'm going to actually go out of the teacher view and I'm going to go out of the teacher app. The reason why it says grading is because I didn't give a grade there. But what I'm going to do is I actually, within this Canvas course, I'm signed in as Brian as a student. So that way I can see what he's seeing. So if we go into the Sandbox course of his, what you're going to see from the student view on the iPad is you're going to see within that course, that's the Sandbox course that we're in together, and he's the student, he has announcements, assignments, grades, and WebEx as his tools over on his course navigation. You're going to see down here at the bottom, this is the dashboard of the course, or his dashboard. He will have the calendar view down here. He will have a to-do list. Here's his notifications, and here is his inbox. So what you can see is you can actually see all of those features that we were asked to make sure that we are taking the opportunity to feature and use this year for every one of our students is here. You can see that homepage, that front-facing course card, includes our class overview, that instructor information, and then our buttons to our course. But what the student can do is the student can come over to their assignments right over here at the side. And what they can do is they can actually take a look at, we just looked at that markup PDF. Okay, we can see that in here. Let's take a look. Oh, I got a C on that. Resubmit assignment. The student can come in here and resubmit the assignment, but let's go into that, let's go into that feedback. So where we want to go is we want to go into that submission and rubric. Oh, why is it not bringing me in there? Let's go back into our grades. My apologies. I got to go into the grade. So let's go into that markup PDF. There we go. Go into my grade. Uh-oh. Now what I can see is I can see as the student, there's what I submitted. Okay. My feedback. There's my description. There this is. Submission and rubric is in there. Down here at the bottom, do you see here are my comments? Here are my files. Let's go into the comments. And here are the comments that the teacher made. So we can all see that from that student app, we absolutely need to make sure that we're taking the opportunity to show our students how to get in and access that feedback. So down at the bottom, here are the comments. Here was the file, that particular file that was, and then the rubric. You can see that the rubric wasn't showing there. So there's our comments. And then what we can do is that little slide tab slides up and down. But then when I go into that, it will bring it in. And you can see where I started to make comments on there as well. So in those live links that we're providing for students, they also have that feedback where you can also go up over here and make feedback as well and put comments in that area together. Is there anything else that people would like to see? The one feature within the app that I like I go into the teacher side of the student app. When I have a lot of submissions, it is very nice within the speed grader that you can actually swipe between your students. And that really makes that process go a little bit quicker. So when I go into that not submitted yet, I can access all of those students very, very quickly. And I could even leave a comment, but then I can swipe between them. And that saves time for grading. So when I have people ask, which do you prefer to use for grading? When I have a lot of assignments that are coming in, I prefer to use my app because I can use the iPad app to offer quick feedback and swipe between my students to grade. If I just have one or two assignments, I will use the speed grader from my dashboard of my computer. You can use them in both areas to give that feedback. Was that helpful? Did I miss anything that you need help with? It's very quiet. I'm trying to use that teacher await.
So Tammy, just to be sure,
Yes, please.
Felicity answered this too, but the students will they get notifications when we put a comment in? Because
They will, but remember, they have to have that set up. Like sometimes if they don't get notifications, it's one of two things, Meredith. Either they don't have their notifications set to get them, or that eyeball is off. That eyeball can be a little nemesis, I'm telling you. That you always want to make sure that that eyeball is on for students to see what's going on. I love it that they have the option for hiding, but sometimes you don't realize that you're not published or the eyeball is off when you think that you're giving those students that feedback. And I have made that mistake myself. So that's always number one to check. But I do love like how we know that you get so many assignments sometimes that it takes a while to get through and grade, especially when you're going through assessments or you're going through a big lab activity that you've done. It's really important that you take that time and you want them all to as you're grading, you want them all to come in at the same time. Love, love, love that hide feature. But just make sure they're not hidden when you thought they were returned to the students. And that's always just making sure that you're checking and communicating with them. So notifications in the eyeball.
Any guesses coming through in the chat? Quizzical. Okay, it's called quizzical, not physical. Let's get quizzical, quizzical. All right, sorry. This is what happens when I sit too long. I'm not a sitter, and these days get long for me, as I'm sure they are for you as well. We're going to go ahead and we're going to talk about another awesome feature within Canvas, and it's called the Canvas quizzes. So let me just get all of my tools all set up here properly, and Olivia Newton-John tucked away for another time. And we're going to go ahead and we're going to dive into one of my classes. I'm going to go ahead and jump into the Sandbox class that I've been working on over the last couple of days. And we're going to take a peek at quizzes, which can be found within that course navigation, right? That little quizzes link right there. And so when we click on quizzes, you're going to notice it's a very similar screen as our assignments and our pages and so forth, that when we want to add another one, we simply click on that little add quiz button in the upper right-hand corner. So note that when you click on that button, there's an option. You have to choose which quiz engine you would like to use. And so the two options are classic quizzes and new quizzes. And for the majority of last year, we had the new quizzes function turned off just because it wasn't speaking nicely into our grade book and it was causing more hiccups than it was good. But what's happening now within Canvas is they are slowly migrating to just having new quizzes. And so we're kind of in this interim phase. I believe classic quizzes is scheduled to phase out next fall. However, there are still some uses of classic quizzes that I'm going to show you today. And that really kind of relies on the survey side of things, and we'll take a peek at those. But for the most part today, we're going to be looking at new quizzes and kind of how those work. And so I'm going to start by showing just a quick little overview of the new quizzes. We'll go ahead and get this started.
this video, you will learn how to create and manage assessments using new quizzes in a Canvas course. New quizzes assessments can be accessed from the quizzes page. To create a new assessment using new quizzes, click the Add Quiz button. In the Choose a Quiz Engine modal, select the New Quizzes option, then click the Submit button. Enter the details for your assessment, including the title, points, due and availability dates, and other assessment options. Then click the Save button. Once you've entered and saved your new quizzes assessment details, you can add and manage quiz content in the Build page. The Build page displays the assessment title. Click to edit the title at any time. You can also enter instructions for the assessment in the Instructions field. To align learning outcomes to the entire quiz, click the Outcomes icon. If you have quiz content saved in item banks, you can quickly add questions to your quiz by clicking the Item Banks icon. To create new quiz questions and content for your assessment, click the Add button and select the question or item type that you want to add. For each question type, you can add a question title, question stem, points, and feedback. For most question types, you can also specify answer choices. You can also align your question to an outcome or save it to an item bank to use in other assessments. Depending on the question type, you may be able to adjust question display options, such as selecting to shuffle answer choices in multiple answer questions. To add the new question to your assessment, click the Done button. After adding questions and content to your quiz, the Question Navigator allows you to quickly find and organize assessment items. You can also preview your quiz by clicking the Preview button. To manage settings for your new quizzes assessment, click the Settings tab. From the Settings menu, you can shuffle questions, shuffle answers, display one question at a time, require an access code, set a time limit, filter IP addresses, allow an on-screen calculator, allow multiple attempts, and restrict student result view. Once students have completed the assessment, you can view data about student performance and moderate assessment attempts. To view assessment reports, click the Reports tab. The Quiz and Item Analysis Report provides data about student performance for the overall assessment and for individual questions. The Outcomes Analysis Report includes outcome mastery statistics for all students who took the assessment. To moderate student assessment attempts, click the Moderate tab. The Moderation page displays student scores, the time to complete the assessment, and links to access quiz logs for all students who have attempted the assessment. To view a student's responses in a specific assessment attempt, click the link for the attempt. The assessment results page includes the student's overall grade, correct answers, incorrect answers, and answers that require grading. It is recommended that you use SpeedGrader to grade new quizzes assessments. Additionally, the Moderate page allows you to set accommodations that apply across all assessments for the course. You can also manage accommodations for an individual assessment. To manage accommodations for a student across all assessments in the course, locate the student and click the Edit icon in the Accommodations column. You can provide students with additional time, remove the time limit, or add a time limit multiplier. To provide accommodations that only apply to this assessment, click the Moderate button. From the moderation settings, you can reopen a student's most recent attempt, give additional attempts, add additional time, or remove the time limit. You've now completed this overview video on new quizzes.
Okay, so that's just kind of a really nice quick overview video. The next thing that I just want to show you briefly is right now, this summer, we've also been running an online Growing in Canvas course as a PD option. Some of you may have done that last summer. Maybe some of you yourselves kind of worked through pieces of that this summer, but we have a sample new quizzes built in there, and it does a really nice job of just showing some of the question capabilities within this quiz tool. And so I'm just going to go ahead. This is where that quiz was built. So you can see all the questions are kind of laid out here. But just like the video indicated, there is a preview button. And so we're going to take a peek at what these questions look like from the student view. So I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to click on this preview. And one of the nice things that I love about quizzes is that you can set them up so that they only show one question at a time. Okay, so that's kind of nice for our learners so that they're not so overwhelmed by just this huge assessment sitting in front of them, but it's kind of chunking that assessment into one question at a time. So this first question type, this is called a hotspot question. Essentially what you do to build this question is you bring in some sort of image and you indicate where the correct answer is on that image. And it totally relies on students clicking in the right spot. Okay, so this one just happens to say, identify the radius in the following skeletal image. And so students would have to click on that correct bone. Okay, this next one is actually also a hotspot question. They just built this as a photo collage. So they have these 4 pictures as one image, and it's just asking, you know, click on the Greyhound, right? So you can do like a photo collage. So think about some capability within your course content when that might be appropriate. All right, this next one, this next question is called, gosh, I just lost the type of the question this is. Tammy, maybe you'll remember, but when we start building one, I'll remember what it is, a source or something. I can't think of the name of it right now. But essentially what's happening is you are loading it's a stimulus question. I think that's what it is. So you're loading a stimulus in one side. In this case, it's a little article about pandas. And then there are questions that correspond with that on the right-hand side, okay? So notice how we're gonna move through this and there's going to be multiple questions about the same passage. And as we move, it's just the question's going to change. And so students will still have access to this paragraph. What's also nice is on the student view, students can use those accessibility features that we talked about. They could highlight all of this text and select speak, right? They could do that 2-finger swipe and have that little article spoken to them. All right, so you can see there's just a simple multiple choice question in this one. Let's go to the next one. Okay, this one is having us type. Right, so we have almost like long answer type questions. You have to type in what the answer would be, again, using that same reading passage. All right, here's another question. This one, true or false. Some of you might already starting to feel like, oh gosh, this looks a lot like the state assessment that we have our students go through, right? And some of our other assessment tools. So it's kind of nice that that's kind of a similar environment and experience for students, just so that when it comes to those state assessments that it's not, you know, some anxiety just because of the format. Here's another one, a long answer question. Okay, this one's kind of fun because you have these drop down matching type of questions. Right, and students would just select the right answer. This one is putting events in order, and so they basically will click and drag events to different places to put it into the correct order. This one is a math equation type that supports answering with just numbers. I love this one, it's a sorting one, right? So mammals and non-mammals, so students have to drag and drop into the correct box.
Felicity?
Yeah.
The number 1. If kids put it in decimal form versus whole number, does it automatically round so that, for example, this fraction, someone puts it in 0.4, or do they put it at 0? Is there a rounding feature so that, you know, the students know it, but they didn't put it in the right format, so they get it wrong?
Yeah, great question. You're going to see, and we're going to give you some time to build one of these, that you have the capability to set what you want that answer to be, like how many decimal points and that type of thing. So you have some choice there. So you can explore that when we give you a little bit of work time. I'll challenge you to make one like that and we can take a peek at it.
Yep.
Okay. And then this last question here, this is just another hotspot question. I used to have questions like this for students to answer right on paper, but essentially students have to identify where the error is within this solving, the steps to solve this problem. Okay, so again, it's relying on students to click and so forth. So that's kind of how, that's some examples of this little quiz. Now we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna start building one together. So I'm gonna go ahead and here I'm going to say new quizzes. Now, if you're thinking I'm only going to use new quizzes from here on out, you can select remember my choice for this course. Know that you can also change it later on. Essentially, it's just preventing this pop-up box from coming on every time that you select that add a quiz. So I'm not going to do that because I do want to show you some useful purposes to still choose classic quizzes coming up here, especially for elementary. All right, so we're going to go ahead. When I hit submit to start that quiz, this looks very similar to some of the other types of assignments that we've set up, right? Some of these preset values that we have to determine. So we're just going to call this monarch butterflies. For those of you who don't know that about me, I actually am raising, I have a tank full of monarch butterflies behind me right now. One just hatched just about an hour ago. I have about 18 more cocoons to go. So just seems to be the season to talk about butterflies. All right, you can set your points here. Again, you have the option to put this into an assignment group. So I've been working on this reading course. So I would put this into that like nonfiction comprehension, right? I wanted to display as a letter grade. I've already set that grading scheme within my course settings. You don't have to worry about any of this. The new quizzes relies on an external tool. So that's all set and ready to rock and roll. Nothing has to be changed there. Of course, you have that capability to allow unlimited or limited attempts. And then again, who you're assigning this to and when it's due and so forth. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and hit save. And now it's going to take me into my next screen here. And this next screen is really where we start to build this quiz. Okay, you'll remember from that video running across the top here, we're on the build tab right now, which is when I'm going to start bringing in my questions. But the setting tab kind of lets you come and set some things for your quiz, like if you want those questions to be shuffled so that not every student is getting the same question at the same time. You can even shuffle answers, which I would have loved to have that feature on some of the tools that I used when I was still in the classroom. I like this one, that one question at a time, right? It kind of chunks that content and so forth. So know that that's where you can kind of go set some of those settings. Moving across to your item banks, just to give you a little more information on what item banks are. That you can create item banks in new quizzes, and basically they're used to store questions for other assessments. So maybe if you've been adding questions to an item bank, you could access them from right here. You can also get into your course outcomes. And so if you have a course outcome that kind of covers this entire assessment, you can select them right here, but you can also select an outcome per question, and I'll show you how that works, okay? So here we are, we have our monarch butterflies. The first thing that I'm asked to do is to come in here and give some directions or some instructions. And so you could type something very general, right? So I'll just say, take your time and do your best. Note that this is very similar to the rich content editor box. It's not exactly the same, but we have kind of the same types of like functions up here. You also could bring in some media. You could also insert a quick video clip if you had to, or a link and so forth. Okay, so I'm just going to keep it like simple right now. Clicking on this plus sign right here will give me my question options. And so you can see there are all kinds of question options here. Okay, so the first one that I wanted to show you is that hotspot question. And so I'm going to go ahead and select that as an option. Now, this was super confusing for me when I first started using Canvas and using the quizzes, is that when I would come up here into question title, I was like, okay, I have to give my question, give each question a title. And you do not. Question titles are optional. They are not visible to students, okay? It's for like a nickname, or if you wanted to tag your question to help maybe file those later, like maybe you wanted to name them a chapter or a standard or a unit, but the important part is students do not see that. Okay, question stems, they do see, right? The question stem is going to contain the question itself, and if necessary, some additional directions or information. So this is a hotspot one, so I'm just going to put my question in here. Identify where butterflies, oops, migrate in the winter. Okay. So now, of course, you know that for a hotspot question, we have to have some sort of image, right? So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to browse for that image now. And see if I can find, I have a little Canvas demo here. Okay, so here's my image that I'm going to use. And notice my options here for drawing the hotspots shape, right? So I can use just a square, I can use an oval, or a polygon and so forth. Okay, so I'm going to just go ahead, I'm going to keep it on the square, and I'm going to allow my, oops, we don't want to have that quite in there. Maybe I should do my circle, I'm thinking. I wonder what the polygon would be. Let's see here. Oh, there we go. Oh, so now I can kind of do a more customized shape here. There we go. Okay, so that's my hot spot. So anytime a student clicks within that area, okay, that answer will be correct. As I come down on here, I have a few options for this question. Don't think I need to have the on-screen calculator for this question, but notice that here is where I can align this to an outcome. And so if I clicked right here, it would give me access to any of the outcomes that I've already brought into my course. I also can add it to a bank if I've been making use of that feature. You also have the flexibility to select how many points you want each question to be. And I love this little feature right here is student feedback. And so if you wanted to have a little message to your students when they got the correct answer, if you wanted a little message for an incorrect answer, you have that customization, or even just a general feedback, right? So that's what that little dialogue button means right there. And when I'm done, I can just hit done.
Hey,
Now I'm
Felicity.
ready. Yes.
So I'm just a little bit confused about the points because
Mhm.
let's say you have a 10-point quiz on there, but you want to grade it out of the 4-point scale to go in the grade book. Does it figure that out, or how does that work?
So if you have that grade scale applied, right, it's going to do that math for you. But I get that, like it's a little tricky when you say my quiz right now, I have set at just 4 points. I probably would probably make mine more like however many questions I have on the test, right? And it's still going
Right.
to apply it to that 4-point scale because that's the grade scale that we have associated with our course.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Yep. All right, I'll just quickly do another question here. I'm going to this time do that stimulus question so you can kind of see how you can put content on one side and questions on the other. So go ahead and select that one for my next one. Again, the title is optional. Oh, maybe this one is the title. Looks like instructions are optional here. So read. It's the question title. Yeah, that's weird. The STEM is usually the one that's the one that students will view, but in the stimulus one, it must be a little bit differently. Let's see. Monarch butterflies. Read the passage carefully. You guys get this. All right. So my content here, again, I'm given a very similar experience as the rich content editor, not quite exactly the same, but I can, of course, insert images and media. So I'm going to go ahead and just throw a picture in here for you to see. We'll go ahead and add that. Oops, actually, I wanted to point out one more thing on that. So I'm actually going to delete that and do that again for you. So I'm going to bring in this butterfly picture right here and just kind of a best practice to always remember what this alternative text means. We always want to have that mindset of creating content that's accessible for all of our learners. And so if we have any students who rely on that screen reader technology, right, maybe they have a vision impairment, that screen reader is going to tell students what that image is that they have their finger on. So I'm just going to put image of monarch butterfly. Okay, sorry, that'll be my dog. Nico, come here. The joys of working at home. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and I'm just taking some content here, which I know is not best practice. Please ignore my giant golden retriever in the background. Sounds like a beast, but he's not. Okay, so there I have my content already in there. I could put that source URL in there. It's optional. Again, that's not visible to students. That's more helpful for me as a teacher, right? I have that option to add that to a bank. Now, if I add that stimulus, right, it's all added in there. So my question, or I'm sorry, my content and my image are all ready to go. Now I just have to attach those questions. And so I have those same options on what kind of questions I want. So true and false one, right? And so forth. I could keep attaching questions, but remember I have this quiz set up that it's just going to show one question at a time. So I'm going to give you some time. I want you to have some time to get in here and play and just start creating a fun quiz just for fun, just to get used to this tool. And then I want to show quizzes again and hit a new quiz. If I selected classic quizzes, I just want to quickly talk about why you might want to use that. A great question was asked previously. I know many of you were using quizzes last year within Canvas. Keep in mind that migration to new quizzes isn't scheduled to happen until, I believe, next fall. And there is a process in line to take that content from these classic quizzes and move it over to the new quizzes. So know that we'll be watching that carefully, because we know that we do have several of you and other instructors who have built quite a bit of content in those classic quizzes. But really quickly, just to kind of show you how this one works, right? Very similar. You have to give your quiz a name. You have this instruction box, and this time you get that full rich content editor to bring in all kinds of content and even embed materials if need be. But right here where it says quiz type, if we expand that menu, what I suggest using this one for are the surveys, because as of right now, there is no survey option within the new quizzes. I'm hopeful, crossing my fingers, that this will also move over into the new tool soon. And the reason why I like the surveys, because there are some times when you just want to gather information from students that you don't want anything to do with the grade book, or, you know, like necessarily for assessment reasons and things like that. And so these are the two examples I'm going to show you, are the ungraded survey and potentially graded survey, I suppose. But as you kind of come through here, again, very similar kind of settings that you can kind of decide between, right? That shuffle the answers. If you were to put a time limit on, multiple attempts, what kind of feedback, right? Show correct answers at a specific day, kind of interesting, right? And so forth. All right, so I have two teachers who this past year have found really, really creative uses for this when they went into their question section. One of them is a fourth grade teacher who taught at Riverside Elementary, Sarah Thompson, and she's given me permission to use this quiz to kind of show. She had that first hour special, and elementary teachers who are in that same position, you know how impossible it is to get your students on time anywhere, right? So if you have first hour special and they all have to check in for lunch, it's like, oh my gosh, we're never going to make it. So she decided to start using an ungraded survey for her students to check in for lunch. And as I'm thinking about moving into this next school year, face-to-face instruction, typically in an elementary room, checking in for hot lunch might include people really close, right? It might include people grabbing popsicle sticks or magnets or whatever. And we just want to avoid those types of circumstances. So maybe this would work for you as well. I'm going to go ahead and preview how she set this up. So she created questions with the choices. Essentially, these are multiple choice questions. So here's Monday, your first choice, second choice, cold lunch, right? On to Tuesday, Wednesday. This way it even accommodates when you have those special lunches in elementary, like a salad bar thrown in there. And then her last question was all about breakfast choices. And so they had to sign up for those breakfast choices in advance as well. And so what's so nice about that is that when she would go to moderate that quiz, I'm going to go ahead and just go back really quick and do the survey statistics here. She could quickly go in there and see, okay, 17 people want first choice. Those are my students, right? 3 are taking cold lunch, and so forth. And so it made checking in super fast. Students could check in for the entire week on Monday, and we're ready to rock and roll. Also, she set this quiz up that students could take it more than once, because we know things change, right? Oh gosh, I forgot to bring my cold lunch. I have to take hot today. So they could go in there and update as need be. So I thought that was an awesome, awesome use of this quiz. It's nice because parents can even sit down with students and do that on Monday morning before they even get to school, right? So think about that. I've also encouraged, gosh, if this is something that your school is interested in, why not take turns and say, hey, I'll do the month of September and put it in Commons. You can go grab that quiz and assign it to your students, right? That whole work smarter, not harder type of thing. The other really cool use that I saw, and this one comes from Weston Elementary, is of course we're all, talking about those zones of regulation and our SEL instruction and things like that. And so this group of teachers decided to have a ungraded survey for their students to check in throughout the day. So they were taking this multiple times throughout the day to help students to have that capability to start kind of self-regulating, like starting to identify when are times that I'm feeling upset or whatever. Right, so those students were continually taking the survey. And then I love question 2. Is there anything you want to share with your teacher about why you're feeling this way? And I love this because it's all confidential. It's a really quick way to see where kids are at and kind of where their levels are, and if we have to employ any strategies, right? So another super creative use of this ungraded quiz, or ungraded survey, sorry. I just never would have necessarily thought to use it this way, but I know there's other uses, and maybe secondary has some that they're willing to share, but love it. Any questions about quizzes? Everyone's so quiet today. It must be the rainy, gloomy day.
Felicity, can we share the quizzes amongst teachers? I mean, if a one grade level is doing all the same thing, can we share these quizzes?
Yes, absolutely. So a couple of ways that you can share those. So the first way is that, like, if you're sharing amongst multiple teachers, remember that you have, I'll just take this example. This is one of those zones of regulation. So if you identify a quiz that you're like, yep, I think other teachers would really find use for this, especially maybe outside of my building, is you can share a quiz to Commons. So you can go put it into the DC Everest Commons, and then any teacher can go and grab that. If you're thinking more of a PLC level, then some of my suggestions there are maybe you're all collaborating together on a course and you're just all instructors within that sandbox course, and you can easily move content from that sandbox course into your actual live courses. So as those courses as those quizzes are being built, you can just export them into the course that you use with your students.